Liberia, a small country located on the coast of West Africa. Founded in 1822 as a result of the American Colonization Society, who brought freed slaves from America to Africa. The coup was followed by many violent and gruesome events, and ultimately a 14-year-long civil war that led to the country's destruction. 14 years later, Liberia is in a state of recovery. The trauma and pain Liberians went through is unreal. Join us as we sit down with a few survivors living in both Liberia and America. These are their stories.
Hello. I'm Christine Tolbert Norman. I'm the current mayor of Bentol City. Bentol City is the capital city of Monserrate County. In fact, I was born in this very city over 73 years ago. And so I'm very privileged to be here as city mayor. By 1980, I was then Deputy Minister of Education for Instruction of the Republic of Liberia. I took on the job to be Deputy Minister really to assist the nation at that time, because as a professional educator, when the President, my dad, asked me to take that position, I thought I had something to offer, and I took it to be able to help his administration and help the nation. So we were observing some disturbances in the country. It started off like in 1979. There was the rice riot on April 14, 1979. The president, who was an agriculturist, who was a progressive person, saw the need to have Liberia produce its own staple food, rice. And so he came up with policies regarding the production of rice, the mass production over the whole nation of rice, knowing that Liberia was a rice-producing country in the past. So his idea that there should be no imported rice by a certain date. That meant that every rice that was sold, the benefit of that would go to Liberian farmers. I think that was very progressive at that time, 1980. And so the cost of imported rice would be so very high that people would rather buy Liberian rice, which was higher in protein content. The Liberian upland rice is reddish. It has a lot of protein and iron. And so the value of rice was to be at $22 a bag. A 100-pound bag of rice was $22. That was the price they put. And the rice producers in the diaspora came and, like normally, they paid people at the university to sabotage the president's policy. In that, they wrote a paper that said the president was doing all of this to benefit himself. And it couldn't be, because if the president was not a sole producer of rice, the rice production was not the president's monopoly. He was a rice producer because he was a farmer. But there were rice farming in every county. There were what we call produce marketing, and there were rice harvesting and machinery in every county. So there were cooperatives producing rice. And that would have been, this is like about 35 years ago. If that had happened, but now Liberia would be really self-supporting in rice. But today, if you check the Ministry of Commerce, we import millions of dollars of rice that goes out. And farmers now have to be paid to produce rice. People say the rice riot. If you read about the rice riot, that was the beginning of the military political destabilization of the country. University students went in the street to march to say the president's policy was wrong. The president begged him, pleaded with him not to riot. They rioted, and the police clashed, and some people died. And as a result, it was a beginning of this destabilization of Liberia's political system. A year after, which was 1980, April 12, the military coup d'etat happened. 1980 was about 37 years ago, so it's long ago, but memories of that type seem to be fresh. It's like yesterday. The day before, which was April 11, was a Friday. It was fast and prayer day. So people were fasting. I think I was fasting. But we were also preparing for a big state wedding the day after, which was April 12. And then the Baptist was celebrating its 100th birthday in Liberia, anniversary. So my dad and our family were busy for that. I should have gone to the big concert. It was with 100 voices singing to the glory of God for the Baptist 100th anniversary. But I found myself busy decorating for the wedding. So I was helping the family decorate the executive pavilion for the wedding, which was on April 12th. I wasn't there, but we heard that it was a glorious celebration the night before my dad was killed. It was April 11th, prayer day, and about 11, when I was waking up for a call about 1 o'clock, April 12th morning. It was on March 16. They're shooting around the mansion. I said, wow. I knew that, what it meant, you know, military demonstration and so forth, but I didn't know it was going to that extent. They had climbed to the 8th floor where the presidential residence were, and it was shooting around the veranda of the president's residence. My mother was in there, my dad, and all the mansion children. It just happened my kids would have been there if I didn't send for them, because they spent time at the mansion on the weekends and so forth. But I got that call, so I sent for my sister. I made other calls. When I finally got back to my mother around 2 or 1:45, there was no answer. So I knew that she was out of connection. And so from April 12th night, 2 o'clock, I didn't speak with or see my mother until July. She was in prison, I was in prison, but in between there are many things that happened. But the morning of April 12th, we left at 3 o'clock in the morning. When I couldn't get my mother, I knew that it meant there was a military coup. I don't know what gave me the inspiration or the sense or wisdom to move from my house. So we got in the car, my children, my sister's children, and the whole family. I didn't pack clothes for myself because my baby was 8 months old. So I packed his clothes, I packed food for them. We got in the car, we went to hiding. We moved from our house. We didn't tell the night watchman where we're going. We didn't tell the driver where we're going. We just left and drove off. I went with one dress, and I never saw my house again for 1 month. But when we left the house, we went to the first house and stayed from about 3 until 7. When we got there, about 7 o'clock, we realized again it wasn't safe. So we moved from that house to another house. And we stayed there until about 5. So about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I realized that the community where we were wasn't safe enough. So I put my baby on my back. I took the bundles of clothes, and the whole family walked into another place where it was all the way into an area called Cowfield on Dupont Road, the far end of Dupont Road. And we stayed there for about 2 nights. My dad was killed. Many political, the police and the soldiers and security in the mansion were killed. And that we could hear the radio from then on. The day and days after, you could hear people were dragged in the streets, women were raped, people were devoured. And my dad's body was taken from the executive mansion, dragged down the steps, but finally put into the morgue at the JFK. So people were going there to see. It was on public display. And then about 10 days afterwards, all of the government officials that were working for my dad or family members were arrested and put in central prison, treated very inhumanely, put in the prison called the interview room. The interview room was a 8x8 room, and something like 20 people in an 8x8 room. They could either stand or sit. No air, people just died right in that interview room. But on April 22, they had the government then built, they had 13 poles constructed on the BTC field, and it took 14 people out to be executed. At the time, they would take them by 13, come back, take the first, second 13. It happened that my sisters, Willie and Ebony, had been put in prison, so they were right at BTC in one of the rooms, watching everything. And they saw, they put the president, put the 13 people, including my Uncle Frank, Frank Stewart, cousin Frank Stewart, and a lot of them on the pole and execute them in the public. There are pictures of that, and the world have seen it. But what amazed me was that the public cheered and danced and sang. And it was like the extreme of, for me, the value of life. Because even if somebody had stolen, or somebody was a political prisoner, you would take them to court. There was no court case, there was no judgment, but the PRC made a pronouncement that there were 600 people on the list to be executed for the military coup, which was socialistic oriented or communistic oriented, to be executed. And my name was on the list. I was one of those of the 600 that were to be executed. If the revolution would be successful, they had to eliminate people who would come back to revenge. Ambassador McLean, Johnny McLean, was the 14th. He was in the car waiting to go. And then just about the time they finished it, there was an intervention. The PRC leader, President Doe, at that time he was a PRC leader, Master Sergeant Doe, was communicated by the Queen of England, the Vatican, high state powers intervened and pleaded with them to stop that carnage and destruction of lives. And they just took Mr. McLean back. He's still living today. He has a story of faith and of God's intervention. But 13 was executed. A couple of days afterwards, they gathered all the 13 bodies with my dad and all of the people who were killed in the mansion, the military one, Sergeant Rayleigh, and all of the bodyguards of my dad who died, including one of my brothers who was killed. And they put them in at BTC, at the central prison. They had a big hole dug, and they buried all of them in one mass grave. If you go to Central Street Graveyard, you will see a place called the Mass Grave. That's where they put my dad. Or they put all of that, and they put my dad on top. And the pictures of that, they showed him right on top of the bodies, and they covered it with dirt. And then when the family came back, a couple of years, we asked the Baptist Convention to help us to build a monument, and build a little kiosk around it to keep the desecration, to prevent desecration of the area. But the coup was a terrible experience. But what I want to say that what the emotion that overtook me was fear and not sadness. Fear overtook me because you fear about your life. And so I hardly cried. It was just a survival mood, and I can take that now and in retrospect think, wow, it wasn't until my Uncle Daniel died that I really cried and cried and cried and cried and cried, because he was the youngest brother, one of the youngest brothers of my dad. And all the members of my uncles, my cousins who were executed, who were killed, and my brother A.B. Tolbert, who at the same time he was under hiding in night when they executed and they buried. He was hiding, and then the military learned that he was hiding in the French embassy. The military barged into the French embassy, broke all diplomatic protocol, and arrested my brother from the French embassy around June of 1980. And so by September he got missing from prison. So we don't know how he was buried. But that again, when my Uncle Daniel died a year ago, I cried like I never cried in my life. Just all the emotions came out, the sadness came out. And when I talk about it now, I don't feel sad for myself, but I feel sad for Liberia. I feel sad to say that even those people, lots of leaders today who are leading the government today in different positions were existing then. They were progressive people, and they allowed that to happen. They saw it happen. There were no manifestation about the evil of that experience for Liberia. And many Liberians, again, no one made a statement, this is wrong. Liberians could have said it was wrong. For them, they were passive, and it was like, oh, let this be and get out of it so we can get along with our lives. But it didn't happen like that.